Nathan wakes up abruptly, lying in the middle of the road, disoriented. He quickly realizes he's been in a car accident. His vehicle is crumpled against the roadside, yet somehow he remains unharmed, no injuries, no bruises. As Nathan tries to gather his thoughts, he's startled by Daniel, the man whose bike he crashed into. To Nathan's amazement, Daniel also seems completely unscathed. Daniel asks Nathan if he remembers getting out of the car. Nathan, still in shock, admits he has no memory of it. He chalks it up to hitting his head on the dashboard during the crash, though curiously, there's no sign of injury or pain. That's when Daniel drops a bombshell. He believes they're both dead, existing now only as ghosts. Daniel explains that he's been wandering for a few minutes and came to the realization after denying it at first. Nathan immediately rejects the idea and runs to inspect his car. The driver's compartment is crushed beyond recognition. To his horror, Nathan discovers his own lifeless body still inside. Stumbling backward in disbelief, Nathan spirals into an existential crisis, overwhelmed with thoughts of his friends and children. Daniel, noticing this, mentions how much he'll miss his wife, subtly pointing out that Nathan never mentioned the mother of his kids. As Nathan's panic intensifies, Daniel tries to offer some comfort, claiming that if the afterlife exists, it must mean there's peace after death. This only makes Nathan's denial stronger. Daniel refuses to let him live in ignorance and drags Nathan's body from the car, forcing him to confront the truth. Seeing Nathan's discomfort, Daniel covers the body's face with a handkerchief. Just then, a car approaches and stops next to them. Nathan desperately tries to ask for help, but the driver can neither see nor hear him. After briefly checking the body with his foot, the man proceeds to steal Nathan's wallet and drives away, leaving them alone again. Now fully convinced of his ghostly existence, Nathan begins to wonder about what comes next. He confesses that he unalived his wife, but insists it was an act of mercy. Before he can explain further, Daniel hears music in the air. Suddenly, a white door materializes before them, while snow starts falling around them. Daniel claims the music is coming from the door, though Nathan hears nothing. Before they can approach the white door, a red door appears behind them, exuding a more sinister aura. Nathan hears faint screams coming from it, though Daniel does not. They conclude that the white door must lead to heaven and the red one to hell. Nathan becomes frantic, convinced that his fate lies in the red door as punishment for his wife's death. He tries to justify his actions, explaining that she was terminally ill and he only wanted to end her suffering. Ignoring Nathan's pleas, Daniel attempts to walk through the white door, but Nathan panics and pushes him aside, stepping through first. Nothing happens. Daniel suggests that maybe if Nathan had been a better person, he might have earned a better door. Nathan, feeling guilty, apologizes for not seeing Daniel's bike during the crash. Daniel, in turn, confesses that he had been distracted by a little girl playing by the road. The two men share an emotional hug as they prepare to say their goodbyes. Daniel steps through the white door, but once again, nothing happens. Confused, he tries again, but finds that the music has stopped. Just then, a voice speaks behind them. The little girl Daniel saw by the road appears, revealing that she, too, is dead. She explains that she was hit by a man on a bike, prompting Daniel to admit that he had been drinking before the crash. Nathan, horrified, realizes that this was no mere accident. Daniel's carelessness had cost the girl her life. The two men attempt to guide the girl to the white door, but she resists, frightened and unwilling to trust strangers. When they fail to calm her down, Daniel, frustrated, picks her up and throws her through the door. Instantly, both the girl and the door vanish. Realizing their time has come, Daniel hesitates, so Nathan forcefully kicks him through the white door before returning to his own situation. Once again, he insists he did nothing wrong in his wife's death. But before he can say more, a monstrous figure emerges on the road, its mouth ablaze and filled with tormented souls. Terrified, Nathan flees through the red door. Nathan finds himself in hell, surrounded by countless unconscious souls. Among them, he spots a young girl and drops to his knees in disbelief. As he reaches for her hand, He's flooded with her memories. The girl's name is Jean, and her home life had been plagued by tension. Creepy shadows haunted her bedroom at night, and her parents' constant arguing only added to her distress. Unable to sleep, Jean would often blame the eerie shapes in her room on the massive tree outside her window. One night, she crept downstairs for a snack, only to find her parents still bickering about her. The father, fearful of his daughter, believed they needed protection from her, while the mother wanted to help her. Now, all those unresolved conflicts have followed Jean into the afterlife, leaving Nathan to face the consequences of his own actions amidst the sea of lost souls. Jean, with clumsy hands, spreads jam over slices of bread, a small smile on her face as she awkwardly wields the knife. She seems happy, perhaps a bit too happy to be handling something so sharp. Later, she recounts an unsettling story to her therapist. Jean recalls feeding cookie crumbs to baby birds and watching the mother bird panic. When the mother approached, Jean unalived the birds without hesitation. She admits to disliking her younger sister, even poking her with pens out of spite, and confesses darker desires. She wants to hurt her parents. Jean knows her parents are scared of her, which is why they lock her in her room every night after she attacked them while they slept. The therapist attempts to dig deeper, asking Jean about her sister, but Jean shuts down, refusing to talk further. The next morning, Jean sits at the table, demanding breakfast, but no one answers. Fast forward years later, Jean is seen at the same table, this time eating cereal with blood-soaked clothes. Her parents lie lifeless on the floor nearby. Jean checks to make sure they are really gone before kissing her mother's cheek goodbye. Afterward, she calmly prepares another slice of jam-covered bread and heads down to the basement, which looks eerily like a massive cave. In the dim light, she brings the food to her friend, Tony, a strange, deformed humanoid creature. Jean believes Tony is responsible for her parents' deaths, but Tony denies it. While he eats, Jean declares that since her parents are dead, Tony can now live with her upstairs. Tony, stepping into the sunlight for the first time, is overwhelmed by the sensation of warmth. Jean shows him around, even teaching him how to use the bathtub while she indulges in her mother's makeup and jewelry. Tony, now clean and dressed in the father's old clothes, helps Jean move the bodies. But before they do, Jean decides to put on a little farewell performance. Using her vivid imagination, Jean stages a play for her parents' lifeless bodies, pretending they are her audience. She recalls waking up with no breakfast, cracking jokes to her imaginary audience. Then, with dramatic flair, she drags Tony onto her makeshift stage, accusing him of being the life taker and sentencing him to death. Tony again protests his innocence, claiming he has no memory of anything before emerging from the cave. But Jean pushes forward, making the invisible audience vote for his unaliving, forcing Tony to stand on a stool to be unalived. Afterward, Tony hides the mother's body under the bed while Jean gleefully jumps on it, reminiscing about teasing her parents with a knife while they slept. Tony then hides the father's body too, but as he looks into the mirror, he realizes he has no reflection. It hits him, he is a manifestation of Jean's dark side, created by her own twisted psyche, and Jean had unalived her parents the previous night. With no cooking skills between them, the two eat cereal and jam-covered bread for lunch. As they eat, the doorbell rings. Jean opens the door to find the mailman, who needs an adult signature for a delivery. Jean calls for Tony, but he doesn't respond. The mailman, unfazed, hands her a missed delivery card and leaves. Panicked, Jean searches the house for Tony, unable to find him anywhere. As she runs, the disturbing drawings she has made over the years flash by, adding to the growing sense of dread. Finally, she discovers Tony in her parents' room, devouring their bodies. She screams at him to stop, but the door slams shut. Later, as her toys burn in a small fire, Jean checks on her little sister, who is quietly drawing a picture of the unalive scene. Jean coldly announces that Tony is hungry, leading her sister to the kitchen. In a sudden, horrifying act, Jean pushes her into the oven and turns it on. She then skips out of the kitchen, humming a happy tune as dark shadows trail her on the walls. In hell, Nathan recoils in disgust at the nightmarish visions he has just witnessed. Desperate to escape, he crawls away and touches another pair of souls, a teenage girl and her mother. The mother, Julia, appears in a fragile state, trying to make tea while on the verge of breaking down. She calls out to her daughter, Chloe, who doesn't respond. Julia notices a dried blood stain on the table and futilely tries to scratch it away, feeling her emotional state crumble further. She heads to the bathroom, where Chloe's lifeless body lies submerged in a tub of bloody water. Julia, in complete denial, drags Chloe's body to the kitchen table, serving her breakfast as though everything is normal. She speaks of possibly going on vacation together, her voice shaking with forced cheerfulness. A flashback reveals Chloe's struggle in her final days. The previous morning, Chloe had sat in the bathtub, dreading another day of school. Julia had urged her to hurry, reminding her that they couldn't be late again. At breakfast, Chloe silently endured her mother's arguments with coworkers over the phone, staring at a knife on the table. Memories of relentless bullying at school tormented her, pushing her to the brink. In a moment of desperation, Chloe pricked her finger with the knife, causing the blood stain that still haunts the table. When it was time to leave, Chloe tried to explain to her mother that she couldn't take it anymore, begging to stay home. She tearfully described school as a living hell, but Julia dismissed her as being overly dramatic, assuring her that she just needed more time to adjust. Chloe's cries for help fell on deaf ears, and now Julia is left to grapple with the devastating consequences of her neglect. Back in hell, Nathan is overwhelmed by the scenes of horror and suffering. He pulls away, struggling to process the traumatic memories of these lost souls, haunted by the dark truths they reveal. Nathan remains on the floor in hell, exhausted from the tormenting visions of sorrow and despair. In his mind, he replays the horrific scene he just witnessed, Chloe's tragic life, her broken mother, and the relentless weight of guilt pressing down on them both. Before he can process his thoughts, the devil himself appears, towering over Nathan. With a cold, commanding voice, he tells Nathan that it's time to face his punishment. Desperate, Nathan pleads his case once more, explaining how his wife suffered from multiple sclerosis and that he believed her death was an act of mercy. But the devil dismisses his excuse, pointing out that Nathan had no right to make that decision. His wife never asked for euthanasia, nor did she give consent. In her mental anguish, she wasn't even capable of making such a request. Nathan's crime, the devil asserts, was not an act of mercy, but one of selfishness. With no room for further argument, the devil begins leading Nathan to his fate, explaining that the first stage of his eternal torment will be semi-isolation. The goal is for Nathan to forget the memories of his former life, leaving behind only pain and despair. As they reach a shadowy doorway, the devil gestures for Nathan to enter. Nathan steps into a dark, cold room filled with still bodies lying in eerie silence. The devil's voice echoes as he announces that the isolation will last for 4,000 years, a mere prelude to the greater suffering that awaits afterward. Horrified, Nathan tries to resist, but the door vanishes, sealing him inside. Alone, he stumbles forward until, suddenly, one of the blankets in the room stirs. A decaying soul named Billy crawls out from beneath the blanket, his rotting form barely holding together. With a sinister grin, Billy sizes Nathan up, calling him his new toy. Without warning, Billy lunges at Nathan, mercilessly tossing him around like a rag doll. Nathan is powerless, unable to defend himself as Billy delivers blow after blow, beating him without stopping. Eventually, Nathan stops responding to the attacks, his body crumpling to the ground in a lifeless heap. Billy, enraged by the lack of resistance, screams in frustration when he realizes he's gone too far. In his violent outburst, Billy has completely destroyed Nathan, forcing him to reincarnate. At that very moment, in the real world, a mother gives birth to a healthy baby. The devil, watching from the shadows, informs Billy that by sending a damned soul back to the living world, he has unintentionally created the Antichrist. As punishment for his carelessness, the devil swiftly unalived Billy, his head rolling across the floor. But the devil assures him that his body will regenerate soon enough. Billy's new mission is to retrieve Nathan's soul and drag him back to the underworld. Time passes, and Billy, with his body restored, appears in the baby's room, preparing to fulfill his dark mission. And that wraps up the harrowing and dark journey of Nathan through hell and the birth of a sinister new force in the living world. What do you think will happen now that the Antichrist has been created? And what role will Billy play in his quest to reclaim Nathan's soul? The narrative leaves us with so many chilling possibilities, and it's a tale that keeps us on edge from start to finish. What did you think of Nathan's struggle to confront his past, and how the story uses haunting imagery to explore themes of guilt, redemption, and punishment? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, be sure to hit that thumbs up button and subscribe for more deep dives into intense and thought-provoking stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.